There's a place most of us assume is safe, our home, a refuge where we let our guard down. But what happens when that sanctuary is invaded? Tonight I'll be sharing true accounts from people who faced the terrifying reality of home intrusions. Back in December, my daughter and I were alone in the house during a particularly heavy snowstorm. I'm writing this down because I still wake up some nights, heart pounding, convinced that I hear footsteps again, coming from the attic. I live in a quiet cul-de-sac in North Yorkshire, England. It's just me and my teenage daughter, Megan. My husband passed away a few years ago. It was a rough time, but we were slowly finding our rhythm again. I work from home as a freelance designer, so I'm usually around the house most of the time. This particular evening, it had been snowing heavily all day. It was so thick that every sound outside was muffled. Megan had gone to bed early after helping me shovel the driveway, and I was in the kitchen finishing up some work around 11 p.m. The snow was still coming down in sheets outside, but no wind. Everything was unnervingly still. At about 11:30, I started hearing what I thought were footsteps upstairs. At first, I assumed Megan was just up to use the bathroom, so I didn't think anything of it. But then I noticed something weird. The steps didn't sound like they were on the floor. They sounded hollow, like something was walking above the ceiling. I paused and listened more carefully. It wasn't steady walking, more like short, sharp tapping, like the sound of someone shifting their weight in the attic. We've got one of those pull-down ladders that leads into the attic, and the access hatch is right in the hallway upstairs, just outside Megan's room. I turned off the kitchen light and crept upstairs, trying to keep my steps quiet so I wouldn't wake her if it really was nothing. But as soon as I reached the top step, I heard it again. Creak, tap, scrape. It was definitely coming from the attic. I stopped dead, heart thudding in my chest. I tried to logic it out. Maybe a squirrel got in, or a bird somehow. But then something else happened that made me nearly fall backwards down the stairs. The attic hatch shifted. I mean visibly lifted, just about an inch or two, enough that I could see a sliver of blackness beyond the wood, and then it dropped back down with a dull clack. I froze. There was no wind, no storm, just a still, snowy night. Nothing should have been strong enough to lift that hatch. Then, while I stood there, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I jumped so hard I nearly screamed. It was a text from my friend Carla, who lives 2 houses down. It just said, "Hey, are you guys okay? I saw a man walking up your drive about 10 minutes ago. Thought it was odd since it's so late." My stomach dropped. I hadn't seen or heard anything at the front of the house, and I'd been in the kitchen, which has a full view of the drive. I'd heard nothing. I quickly texted her back. "No visitors, just me and Meg. Can you see anything now?" No response. My hands were shaking. I backed slowly down the stairs, not taking my eyes off that damn hatch. I locked the door to the downstairs closet, which holds the bottom of the attic ladder when it's pulled down. Then I went back into the kitchen and grabbed the biggest knife I could find. Maybe it was a dumb idea, but I crept back upstairs and slowly and quietly opened Megan's door. She was asleep, mouth open, completely unaware. Thank God. I pulled her door shut and went into my own room across the hall. I locked the door, sat on the floor with my back against it, phone in one hand, knife in the other, and just listened. Nothing. My phone buzzed again. Carla. She wrote, "Just snow now, but there were fresh footprints. Looked like they came around the back of your house, then disappeared. Want me to call the police?" I didn't answer right away, because right then, something else happened. The attic hatch shifted again, but this time, it didn't just lift and fall. It lifted, paused, then fell, slightly off kilter. I could hear the faintest scuffle, like something was moving very slowly up there, like something trying not to be heard. That's when I lost it. I called Carla and whispered, "Yes, call the police." She said she was already on it and would come over. Her husband, David, is ex-army, so I felt a bit safer knowing he was with her. They showed up about 10 minutes later, knocking on my front door and calling my name. I ran down, let them in, told them what had happened and where the noises were coming from. David didn't hesitate. He pulled down the attic ladder, grabbed a torch, and climbed up while Carla and I stood back near the kitchen with Megan, who'd finally woken up during all the commotion and was understandably freaked out. He was up there for maybe 3 minutes. Then we heard him call down, "You're not gonna believe this." Turns out there was someone in the attic, but they weren't there anymore. There was a sleeping bag, some food wrappers, a nearly empty bottle of water, even a damn book. There was also a small pile of dirty clothes and what looked like a battery-powered heater, one of those portable camping kinds. And in the corner, near the far end of the attic, the insulation had been pulled aside, revealing a small square opening that led to the crawl space above the neighbor's garage. A loose board had been shoved aside, like someone had gone out that way. The police came about 20 minutes later and checked the surrounding properties. No sign of whoever it was. We later figured out that whoever had been up there had probably been living in my attic for at least a couple of days. My husband used to store old boxes up there, and I hadn't gone up in months. There was enough food, mostly granola bars, water bottles, and tins of beans, to suggest he'd prepared to stay a while. We had all the locks on the windows checked, and the police believe he got in through the garage, which I don't use much. Apparently, this isn't as uncommon as you'd think. Attic squatters, they call it. We've since installed cameras and outdoor lights and a house alarm. The attic hatch now locks from below, and we had the garage secured properly with metal brackets. It could have been worse, much worse, but the thought that some random man had been crouched just above our heads for days, listening, waiting, whilst I and my teenage daughter were in the house, terrifies and enrages me. Megan still sleeps with the light on sometimes. I can't blame her. I won't lie and say I don't freak out most nights, but for now, I am mostly filled with anger. I feel a lot safer now that I know the house is secure, and the thought of some random weirdo creeping around above my daughter, let's just say, he better hope I never run into him. This happened in 2001 when I was 10 years old, living with my mom and younger brother in a small town in Norway. We were renting the top floor of a converted 2-family house, just on the edge of a wooded area. Quiet place. Too quiet sometimes. My mom was a nurse who worked long shifts at the local clinic. On some early evenings, she'd leave me in charge for an hour or two while she picked up supplies or helped cover for another nurse. I'd watch my 5-year-old brother, Lucas, and we'd play PlayStation or watch cartoons until she got back. This one afternoon felt like any other. Late autumn, cold, but no snow yet. Lucas and I had just finished our after-school snacks and were parked in front of the TV. My mom had gone to help a neighbor down the road who'd slipped on their stairs. She told me she'd be 10 minutes max. Around 15 minutes later, the doorbell rang. We almost never got visitors. I froze. Lucas looked at me, confused. Now, to be clear, we live in the upper floor, and the main front door was downstairs at the bottom of the stairs that led up to our flat. It was an old wooden thing with a bolt lock and a big glass panel covered by a curtain. If you wanted to come up to our part, you'd ring the bell outside, wait for us to buzz you in, and then come up the stairs. So hearing the bell was odd, especially since we weren't expecting anyone. I stood up slowly and peeked out of our kitchen window, which had a partial view of the gravel driveway below. No car, no bike, just a tall man standing completely still in front of the downstairs door. He was wearing a long coat, brown or gray, and thick round glasses that made his eyes look cartoonishly big. I remember that detail clearly. He was also holding something rolled up in his hand. At the time, I thought it was a newspaper. He didn't ring the bell again, just stood there, staring. I ducked back out of view, heart pounding. I don't know why I was instantly so freaked out, but every instinct I had was telling me not to answer. Then I heard the sound that still makes my stomach turn to this day. The sound of the downstairs door creaking open. That door was locked, I was sure of it. I rushed into the hallway and peeked down the inside staircase. The man was on the steps. He was already inside the house. I didn't move, I just stood there in my socks on the wooden floor, trying to figure out what to do. I couldn't even hear him walking, but I could see the shadow he cast on the walls as he slowly climbed toward our floor. Then he stopped. I couldn't see his face anymore, just the top of his head. And then I heard it. He said my name, Marius. He just said it, calmly, softly, like he'd known me for years. Then again, Marius, it's okay. Can you open the door? I nearly screamed. My little brother had heard it too. He ran into the hallway and asked who it was. I put my hand over his mouth and pulled him back into the living room. I didn't say anything. I just dragged him behind the couch and motioned for him to be silent. From where we sat, we couldn't see the stairs anymore, but we could hear everything. He walked all the way up, just stood there, and then he tried again. You don't have to be scared, Marius. Your mom sent me. That's what did it. That sentence. He said it so matter-of-fact, like it was a normal thing. I reached from behind the couch, then I grabbed the cordless phone and dialed my mom's number. She didn't answer. I called our neighbors, the same one that my mom was helping. He picked up. I whispered, "Is my mom still there?" "Yeah, she just left." "Why?" he said. That's when I completely broke. "There's a man at our door. He's in the house. He said Mom sent him." I said. I didn't realize how loud I was. I think the man heard me, because just then, the doorknob rattled. Not forcefully, just once, like he was checking if it was locked. Then everything went quiet. 5 seconds, 10, a full minute. I waited for something, anything. Then the front door slammed shut, hard enough that the windows shook. I crept to the top of the stairs and peeked down. He was gone. I could see the downstairs door swinging slightly where it hadn't fully latched. My mom came home less than 5 minutes later. I was hysterical. To her credit, she believed me right away. She called the police and they came to check things out. Here's the part that gets worse. The lock on the downstairs door wasn't broken. It had been unlocked with a key. No signs of forced entry. The police asked if we'd recently lost any keys or given copies to anyone. We hadn't, but the landlord's son, who lived in the basement apartment and helped maintain the house, did have a spare set in case of emergency. The landlord said he'd been traveling for work that week and hadn't told anyone to visit. And the man I saw, never identified, no matching description, No one found on the property. They thought I maybe misunderstood. I know what I saw. I know he used the real key. I know he said my name. And I know he wanted to get inside without forcing it, like he was hoping I'd be the one to let him in. We moved out a few months later. I've never seen that man again, but I still double lock every door, even now as an adult. And anytime someone says my name from behind a door, I get cold all over again. This happened during spring break of 2022, when I was living in a 2-bedroom apartment just outside of Minneapolis, Minnesota, with my sister Emily. I was in my final year of college, and Emily had flown back to our parents' house in Wisconsin for the week. I stayed behind to focus on some big projects and to take advantage of the quiet. It was supposed to be a chill, uneventful week. I was looking forward to having the place to myself. No one to complain about my music or my weird midnight habits. I have a cat named Jasper. So, when I heard faint creaking from the living room at around 1:30 a.m., I thought it was just Jasper being restless. I was lying in my bed with my laptop, earphones in, watching a true crime documentary while trying to work on a paper. I paused the show, pulled one earbud out, and listened. Creak. Then silence. I shrugged it off. Old building. You hear these things. 15 minutes later, I heard it again, but this time, it wasn't just a creak. It was shuffling. Slow, deliberate footsteps. I took out my earbuds completely, sat up, and called out, "Jasper." No jingling caller. Still not panicked, I figured Emily had come home early and was sneaking around as to not wake me. Her bedroom was just down the hall from mine. I got out of bed, walked barefoot to my door, and listened carefully. Then I heard something that made my blood run cold. The sound of a zipper, like someone opening a backpack. I hesitated for a few seconds, then slowly cracked my bedroom door open. In the living room, a man was crouched by the kitchen drawers with a duffel bag open on the floor. He was stuffing it with stuff from the drawers, random junk like scissors, batteries, lighters. He had his back to me. I froze. Then I blurted out, "What the hell?" He froze, slowly turned around. His face was covered by a ski mask, not even trying to hide it, just standing there, staring at me, one gloved hand still rummaging through the drawer. I backed up and slammed my door shut, my heart pounding so hard I thought it would burst. I locked it, shoved a chair under the handle, and grabbed my phone. My hand shook so badly, it took me 3 tries to dial 911. While the dispatcher was asking questions, I heard footsteps in the hallway. He was outside my door, just standing there. I whispered everything to the dispatcher. She told me to stay quiet and hidden. That help was on the way. Then came the second most terrifying moment of my life. The door handle started turning. Slowly, carefully, I whispered, "I'm calling the cops," hoping he could hear me and back off. Instead, he said something I will never forget. In a low, muffled voice, "I know you're in there alone." He said it like a fact, as if he'd been watching me. That did it. I grabbed my dresser and pushed it hard against the door, making as much noise as I could. After a long pause, I heard footsteps retreating. Then the front door slammed shut. I stayed barricaded in my room until the police arrived, about 11 minutes later. They searched the apartment. The man was gone, and one of his gloves was left on the coffee table, like he forgot it in his rush. The police took prints and filed a report, but they told me something chilling. There was no forced entry. The front door had been locked when I went to bed. Emily's bedroom window was latched shut, but when they checked it, it was wide open. Emily had forgotten to lock it before she left. Since she rarely opened it, she never thought to check it. Our apartment was on the ground floor, so whoever it was had just slipped in through the alley and slid it open. I called Emily the next morning. She felt terrible. She hadn't even realized the window was unlocked. I couldn't be mad. It was an honest mistake, but it could have cost me everything. I barely slept the next few nights. Every noise made me jump. I kept Jasper locked in my room for 2 nights straight. Nothing was stolen technically, because he didn't get away with anything, but the violation stuck with me. The thought that someone was inside my house, watching, knowing I was alone. He left fingerprints on a few surfaces, but they never matched with anyone. The police said it might have been a drifter or a local petty thief, but the way he moved, the way he spoke, he wasn't desperate or drunk. He was calm, calculated, like he'd done this before. Emily and I installed cameras after that. I changed all the locks. I sleep with a bat next to my bed now. To this day, I don't know what would have happened if I hadn't gotten up that night. And honestly, I don't want to know. I live out in the suburbs of Portland, Oregon. Not exactly in the deep woods, but definitely not city center. My house is in a quiet cul-de-sac, surrounded by tall trees, and a few other homes spaced pretty far apart. It's peaceful most of the time, which is why what happened one night hit me so hard. It was around 2:30 a.m. on a cold October Friday. I'd just gotten home from a late shift at the bookstore where I work, and I was exhausted but happy to crawl into bed. My boyfriend, Mark, was out of town visiting family, so I was home alone. About half an hour after I lay down, I heard loud pounding on my front door. At first, I thought it was Mark messing around, maybe trying to surprise me. He's the kind of guy who sometimes shows up unannounced late at night for what he jokingly calls emergency cuddle sessions, so I didn't freak out right away. I got up and crept over to the door, quietly pulling aside the curtain that covers the little window next to it. What I saw wasn't Mark. Instead, there was a scruffy, bearded man I didn't recognize, wearing a stained hoodie and looked disoriented. He wasn't even looking at the door. He was staring off to the side, muttering something I couldn't hear clearly. His eyes were glazed over, like he was either drunk or high. I froze, then quickly stepped back and locked the door. My heart was pounding so hard, I thought it might explode out of my chest. Here's where things got worse. I grabbed my phone from the kitchen counter, but my screen was black, dead. I'd forgotten to charge it all day. I cursed myself under my breath. I ran to the landline in the hallway. Yeah, I still have one, and picked up the receiver. No dial tone. The line was completely dead. I was starting to feel like I was in one of those horror movies where the killer cuts the phone lines before breaking in. Meanwhile, the pounding on the door got more aggressive. "Let me in. Let me in," the man slurred, his voice thick and unintelligible. He started banging his fists harder, making the whole house shake. I grabbed the baseball bat Mark left leaning against the wall and locked myself inside the closet in the guest bedroom. It was cramped, but I figured it was better than hiding out in the bathroom, where there was only one exit. I held the bat tightly, heart in my throat, waiting for him to start trying the doorknob. Then I heard something chilling. He was moving around the house. I could hear his footsteps scraping against the wooden porch, his hands scraping along the siding. Panic surged through me, but I told myself to stay calm. For a moment, I thought, maybe one of the cordless phones around the house was still charged. I've got 2 handsets for the landline. Summoning every ounce of courage, I unlocked the closet door a crack and peeked out. The coast looked clear. I dashed to the kitchen where one of the cordless phones sat. I pressed the power button. It turned on. I almost collapsed with relief. I dialed 911 and stayed on the line. The operator told me that officers were about 20 minutes away. I explained the situation, whispering so I wouldn't alert the guy outside. She told me to stay quiet and hidden. I backed into the closet and locked the door again. Those 20 minutes were torture. I could hear him prowling around the house, trying doors, peering into windows, yelling unintelligibly. At one point, I heard a loud crash. My stomach dropped. I didn't know if he'd broken in or was just banging something around outside. Eventually, I heard sirens. The man took off, running down the street. The police arrived and found him about 2 blocks away, stumbling in the dark. He was a young guy, early 20s, unshaven, clearly intoxicated or high on something. Turns out, there had been a party about a mile down the road, and he'd gotten lost on his way home. He thought my house was one of the houses hosting the party. He'd been trying to get back in for nearly half an hour. The cops thanked me for staying calm and safe, and reminded me to keep my phone charged and my doors locked. I'm still shaken, thinking about how close I came to a very different outcome. This story happened when I was 12 years old. I'm female and currently 25. The story I'm about to tell you might not be scary to most, but for me and my parents, it was. I remember it was a Saturday night, around 9 or 10 p.m. during summertime. I owned one dog at the time. His name is Benny. My parents decided that night they felt like going for a walk around the block, walking Benny, and asked me if I wanted to join them. I said no, because I wanted to play Perfect World International. My parents were okay with leaving me alone, since the walk wouldn't be longer than 30 minutes tops. As my parents got dressed to leave the house, I logged into Perfect World International and looked around in my guild and global chat to see if anyone was on. For some reason, no one was, so I decided to join my parents. I get dressed and put Benny on his leash and we all leave. I'd like to mention that I lived in an apartment building that had 10 floors, and we lived on the very first floor. I lived in the very first apartment that you would see when you entered. I remember always hating that, because whoever would pass by our door, we would hear them at any time of the day or night. Whoever was lurking at night, we would hear them. It was somewhat eerie to live there. Anyway, we leave the house. My dad closes the door. We had 3 keyholes in a steel bar that would block the door from the inside. The bar covered half the door. Precautions were my father's obsession. We exit the building and enjoy our walk. After 15 minutes, we realize the wind has changed from warm summer wind to incoming storm wind. My mom makes the call to go back home, as Benny already did his duties. So we all return. We open the building door, climb the 5 stairs to our door, and attempt to open it. My father does the following: unlocks the first 3 locks, and then attempts to unlock the metal bar that holds the door locked. At that moment, my father pauses, turns toward us with the most serious face I've ever seen on him, and whispers to us to call the police and ring the neighbor's door. My mom goes to the second apartment, and the neighbor, Ted, comes out asking my father what happened. My dad whispered to him, covering our peephole, "Someone is in our house. He or they are holding the door. Please stay here with my family. I will be back." After saying that, I see my father rush, all by himself, around the building, in the dark. I say dark, because we didn't have street light on the side of our apartment facing the block garden. My dad disappears into the darkness. I go outside too, not following him too much, but only to hear if he gets into trouble. He is my dad, so please don't judge me. As soon as I get out, I hear him shout, "Hey, "You, come back. Who the hell do you think you are?" I called the police. At the same time I hear him shout, I look at Ted, who manages to open the door and enter the house. I go after them and enter my house. It no longer felt like my home. In just 15 minutes, while we were walking, the home intruders made a complete mess of our place. All of our shelves and wardrobes were pulled out. Our clothes were scattered all over the house. Benny's dry food was all over the floor, indicating they must have tripped over his bowls, probably not knowing we owned a dog. But what scared me the most was how organized they were. I say this because after seeing the disaster that was left behind, we knew it was impossible for just one person to hold the door, steal, and organize what they would want to take with them. I say organized because the thieves put in our living room, all packed and ready, everything they wanted, but couldn't steal. On the couch, they placed our laptops, one of our TVs, my father's collection of coins, our phones, chargers, wallets, and even my father's camera. He's a photographer, and that week he had to attend a wedding. They didn't have enough time to steal all of that, so they just settled with some of my mom's jewelry and some pocket money. After seeing this, in my silly child mind, I rushed to my room to check my piggy bank. I always saved up money from whatever chores I did. It wasn't much, but it was my work and savings, and at the time, I thought they stole it too. When I entered my room, I saw the metal bars that were covering my windows were all cut open, and my window was broken. That is how they entered, through my room. My room is the only room facing the side of the building, and the one that's most secluded from view. Needless to say, I never felt safe in my own room, in which I had to live for the next 10 years of my life, until I moved in with my fiancé. The police arrived. They started throwing white dust, I still have no idea what it's called, all over our house to find fingerprints. They take photos, take our statements, analyze my room and the window. They were unable to catch the home invaders, but they were able to tell us that this invasion was not the only one in our neighborhood. During that month, another 4 houses were broken into, one of them being the home of a cop. They told us that the invaders analyzed their victims, learned their schedule, even knew where the children's rooms were as they seemed to be entering the houses through the children's windows. All of the families affected by them had children. They did not expect us to be back that soon and panicked, hence one of them holding the door with his body so the others could flee. The person my dad was shouting after was probably the one holding the door, and the last to escape through my broken window. I don't know what could have happened if I didn't change my mind and give up on raiding for gears in Perfect World International. I would probably have come face to face with these invaders. I am happy I didn't, and I hope to God I never, ever meet with them. This story happened a few years ago. I was in my early 20s and was studying in Paris, France. I was going home from uni. I usually took a short bus ride and walked the rest of the way. That day, I felt slightly uncomfortable. I could sense some guy looking intensely at me. I was used to unpleasant, unsolicited gazes, but this time, his gaze felt beastly. It's hard to explain why, but I felt like prey being stalked. I decided to get off the bus a few stops early. I wanted to avoid him and didn't want him to see where I usually got off. Like I learned in the movies, I waited until someone else pressed the stop button and waited until the last moment to stand up and leave. I didn't notice him getting off the bus. Just as I was feeling the relief of having escaped an uncomfortable situation, I looked over my shoulder, and there he was, a few meters behind me. I walked into a shop, took my phone out, and pretended to be taking a call. When I couldn't see him anymore, I exited and got home as fast as I could. I kept looking back in the busy street. I zigzagged, crossed the street at every crossing. Finally, I believed that him getting off at the same stop as me was just a coincidence. When I reached my building, I looked back one last time, and there he was. He was staring at me, smirking. I ran up to my apartment, climbing the stairs 4 at a time. I reached the top floor, squeezed through my door, locked it, and then froze. My intercom was ringing. Don't ask me why I picked it up. I regretted it the moment I did. I could hear the opposite apartment intercom ringing as well. He had pressed all the buttons one by one, hoping someone would open. But now, he knew my name. Gabrielle. Oh shit. I felt like a deer in headlights. I was frozen. Open the door, please, he said in a pleading voice. I just want to talk to you. Somehow I couldn't move or speak. Come to the window, he added. Look at me. You'll see. I'm not a bad guy. Something clicked. He wanted to locate my apartment in the building. I was not going to make that mistake. I hung up in shock. I waited by the door without moving for what seemed like hours. When I finally managed to calm myself, I called my long-distance boyfriend. Call the police, he said immediately. Why didn't I call the police? I don't know. Today, it would be the first thing I would do. The fear of making a big deal out of something not important, perhaps. What an idiot I was. I called my best friend instead. I didn't want to feel alone. I told her all about it, and after a while, I felt better. Safe. We started laughing. Suddenly, the intercom rang again. 2 hours had passed since I'd come home. I answered. Gabrielle, said the voice. Open, please. I still remember the chills I felt. He was still there. He was there all this time. I was silent, petrified. He was silent, but I could sense his trepidation. Gabrielle, let me in. I'm so thirsty, he said. Just give me a glass of water. This broke the tension. I hung up, curled up in a corner, literally in a recovery position, terrified. I waited. I was scared to make a sound. I knew he couldn't hear me from the hall, but I was scared to even breathe. The intercom rang again and again. I didn't answer this time. I crouched to the sofa and fell asleep in exhaustion. I heard the intercom ring one more time in the middle of the night. I woke up in the morning, afraid to leave my apartment. I called my dad, who came to pick me up. There was no one in the hall, but there was a note in my mailbox. Gabrielle, I am a nice guy. You should have opened to me. We immediately went to the nearest police station. The police listened, and of course told me that I should not hesitate to call them. My dad called a locksmith to install digicode on the building door the same day, and wrote a message to each of my neighbors, asking to not open the door to anyone they didn't expect. He sat in a cafe in front of my building with 2 friends every evening for more than a week. I never saw the stalker again. After this episode, I used a different route to and from uni every day. I kept my phone tightly in my hand and looked back every few meters. Today, I'm still very observant of my surroundings. I never answer the door if I'm not expecting someone. So, people, if you ever find yourself in any kind of uncomfortable situation, call the police. Don't be an idiot like me. Be safe, everyone. Three or 4 days ago, my wife and I were sound asleep in our bedroom. Around 2:54 a.m., our German Shepherd, Duke, started barking viciously. We've never heard him bark like this before, so we assumed something was amiss. I got up to check and see if something was up, and ended up spilling water on my nightstand. It took me about 2 to 3 minutes to clean up the water, and I figured maybe Duke was simply barking at the rain. I went back to sleep, and a few minutes later, Duke starts again with a vicious bark. My wife starts freaking out and turns our lamp on. We sat in bed for a second, spooked, and then we heard someone trying our front door. We heard the screen door clicking into place after being shut. The front door was locked, so he had no way to get in. At this point, I'm freaked out, and so is my wife. From our bedroom, we can see a window in our kitchen that leads out front. My wife starts staring at it intensely and tells me she can see a shadow moving back and forth. She said it was a dark silhouette walking up and down our front sidewalk. At this point, I'm getting scared, and when I get scared, I get angry. I get up and turn on our kitchen light in hopes of spooking the stranger outside. You would think he would leave with our dog barking and the lights turning on. I didn't know what to do at this time, and I made a stupid mistake. I went to my garage and opened the garage door. I then realized I wasn't wearing shoes and went back to my living room to put them on. I wanted to go outside, find the disturbance, and deal with it. Duke was with me the whole time, and when he suddenly turned and started running toward the door that connects to the garage, I knew I had messed up. I turned and looked, and this guy was just standing in my kitchen with mud on his face. The guy smelled like shit. He was wearing relatively decent clothes and didn't appear homeless. I live in the heart of a really nice part of town. As I started approaching him, it looked like he was trying to take his jacket and shoes off. It was very bizarre. I yelled at him, "Get the fuck out of my house," while Duke was jumping and growling and barking at the guy. He took a step back and said something incomprehensible. I yelled, "It's 3 a.m, get the fuck out of my house," and I shoved him. He sort of stumbled and made his way out of the house into the garage, and then left. I shut the garage door and called the cops. The cops came and said there were a couple of meth addicts in the area known to do things like this, except they didn't fit the description of the guy I described. I haven't been able to sleep for a few days now. I don't know what this guy was after. Best case scenario, he was incredibly fucked up and had no idea what he was doing. Maybe he thought it was his house since he started taking his shoes and jacket off. From the door leading from the garage and into the house, there's a glass pane. Where I was standing, he couldn't see me, but he could see my wife. Is it possible he saw her alone and thought maybe she was by herself and wanted to come in? The guy wasn't aggressive toward me, but he was also bigger than me. I'm 6'2" and 210 pounds. Before you all say it, I know I shouldn't have opened the garage. He obviously took it as an open invitation, and I felt guilty about it since the time it happened. I figured barking dog, lights on, garage opening, a normal burglar would just scram. My wife and I are incredibly lucky he wasn't armed or didn't do anything violent toward us. Can anyone help me brainstorm about motives? I just can't understand how anyone in their right mind would act the way he did. This won't be creepy as most of the stories here, but it's something that completely horrified me to my core when it happened. Back in my late teens in Dublin, Ireland, I used to head to a particular nightclub every single week and got to know most of the regulars there, to the point that I could sit at any table and know at least a few people. One night, I was introduced to a new woman that no one really knew very well. I said hello, made very short and polite conversation, and then went about my time as normal, just dancing and drinking. Nothing much of note happened during my time in the club. At the end of the night, I left a little earlier than my friends because I lived really far away outside of the city. I got a taxi home, which was expensive, and I got into bed, falling into a deep sleep. I woke up in the morning, sunlight streaming into the room, and immediately knew something was off. Too much weight on the bed. I spun and looked down to the end of the room, and there, sat at the end of the bed, was the woman from the night before, staring at me wide-eyed, with utter devotion and a weird smile. It was totally fucking horrible. I had no idea what to say, so I said nothing. I was so weirded out by her expression and the whole bizarre nature of the situation, I was dumbstruck. It wasn't a lustful look. It was spooky, obsessive, insane looking. I know for a lot of guys, the idea of having some random woman appear in their bedroom might be a thrill, but this was nothing like that. It was scary, plain and simple. I got up, got dressed, summoned up a bit of courage, turned to her and said, "You're leaving now," and essentially marched her out of the house, telling her that buses leave from the end of the road every half hour. She left without saying anything. From talking to friends and family, I pieced together what had happened. After I left the nightclub, she tried to catch me up, but instead had lost me. She went back, asked around until someone told her the rough area I lived in, got a taxi there, knocked on random doors, waking up neighbors, and eventually one told her exactly where I lived, and then lied to my sister, saying that I'd been expecting her. My sister was pissed off at being woken up, but she let her in. From there she got to my room and sat there for God knows how long, silently watching me. As it turns out, almost nobody from the club knew her at all, but we all assumed someone else must know her. What really spooks me is that if she had wanted to hurt me for whatever reason, she easily found her way right into my family house, right into my bedroom. Ugh, I'm shuddering thinking of it. I hope you enjoyed that. Let me know in the comments what kind of scary stories most unnerve you. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more scary stories. Thanks for listening.